My stepmother stole my inheritance, but she didn't know I owned the bank. That would destroy her empire. The day my father died, my stepmother smiled while reading his will. She thought she had stolen everything from me. 5 years later, she walked into a bank asking for a $50 million loan, never realizing the young woman sitting in the executive office was the same girl she had thrown out with nothing. My name is Sophia Bennett, and if there's one lesson life taught me, it's this: the people who betray you today may one day stand in line asking for your help. I grew up in one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Chicago. My father, William Bennett, was the founder of Bennett Developments, one of the largest real estate companies in the country. He built luxury hotels, office towers, and shopping centers that carried our family name. To the outside world, we looked like the perfect family. Our mansion overlooked Lake Michigan. We traveled in private jets every Christmas. Our home appeared in lifestyle magazines because of its extravagant decorations. But money doesn't guarantee happiness. When I was 14 years old, my mother passed away after a long battle with cancer. The day we buried her, it felt as if all the warmth had disappeared from our home for nearly 2 years. My father focused entirely on work. He buried himself in meetings and business deals, trying to escape his grief. Then he met Victoria Hastings. She was beautiful, intelligent, and knew exactly what to say. Within a year, they were married. At first, I believed she genuinely wanted to be part of our family. She bought me expensive gifts. She smiled whenever guests visited. She called me my lovely daughter. But the moment the front door closed, everything changed. Her smile disappeared. She criticized everything I did. If I accidentally broke a glass, she called me careless. If I stayed late studying, she accused me of pretending to be smarter than everyone else. Nothing was ever good enough. She also had a son named Ethan, who was 2 years older than me. Whenever Ethan made a mistake, Victoria blamed someone else. Whenever I achieved something, she found a way to make Ethan look better. Slowly, she began poisoning my father's mind. "Darling," she'd whisper, "Sophia doesn't appreciate everything you've built. She only cares about herself. She isn't responsible enough to inherit your company." At first, my father defended me, but lies, repeated every single day, have a dangerous way of becoming believable. Over time, he became colder. He stopped asking about school. He stopped joining me for dinner. Even his hugs disappeared. I felt like I was losing him one conversation at a time. Still, I never gave up trying. I graduated at the top of my university class with a degree in finance. I hoped he'd finally be proud. Instead, he simply nodded and returned to reading business reports. No congratulations, no celebration, no smile. A few months later, tragedy struck while attending an international business conference in London. My father suffered a massive heart attack. Doctors tried everything they could, but 48 hours later, he was gone. The funeral was attended by thousands. Business leaders, politicians, celebrities, and longtime employees came to pay their respects. Everyone spoke about my father's incredible legacy. As I stood beside his coffin, I remembered the father who once taught me how to ride a bicycle, who cheered at my school plays, and who promised he would always protect me. I wondered where that father had gone. 3 days after the funeral, our family gathered inside the office of my father's attorney. The room was silent. Victoria wore an expensive black dress and looked strangely calm. Ethan sat beside her with a confident smile. The attorney opened a thick leather folder. "This is the last will and testament of Mr. William Bennett." He began reading. "The family mansion to Victoria Bennett. The Aspen vacation home to Victoria Bennett. The yacht to Victoria Bennett. The investment portfolio to Victoria Bennett. The company shares to Victoria Bennett." Every sentence felt like another piece of my father's life, slipping away. Finally, the attorney looked directly at me. "Miss Sophia Bennett." He paused. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear my own breathing. "You are to receive your personal belongings and $10,000. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. Surely there had been a mistake. The attorney quietly closed the file. "The reading of the will is complete." Victoria slowly stood up. She walked toward me with a smile that sent chills down my spine. Leaning close enough that only I could hear, she whispered, "You were never part of this family. Take your $10,000 and disappear forever." An hour later, security guards carried my suitcase to the front gate. The massive iron gates slowly closed behind me. I stood alone on the sidewalk, staring at the mansion where I had spent my entire childhood, the home where my mother had laughed, the home where my father had once promised to protect me. Now, it belonged to someone who wanted to erase every memory of me. Tears filled my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Instead, I looked back at the mansion one last time and made myself a promise. One day, I won't come back for revenge. I'll come back because I'll have built something even greater. With one suitcase, $10,000, and a dream no one could steal. I turned around and walked toward an uncertain future, unaware that this heartbreaking goodbye was actually the first step toward becoming more powerful than anyone in that mansion could ever imagine. After losing her mother at a young age, Sophia Bennett grows up in one of Chicago's wealthiest families. Her father, William Bennett, is a billionaire real estate developer who loves her deeply, but everything changes when he marries the beautiful and manipulative Victoria. Behind her charming public image, Victoria secretly despises Sophia and slowly poisons her father's mind with lies, convincing him that his own daughter is irresponsible and unworthy. Years later, William suddenly dies from a heart attack. During the reading of his will, Sophia expects to receive part of the family legacy. Instead, she watches in shock as Victoria inherits the mansion, luxury cars, company, investments, and nearly every valuable asset. Sophia is left with only her personal belongings and $10,000. Smiling with satisfaction, Victoria whispers that Sophia was never truly part of the family before having her escorted out of the mansion she grew up in, standing alone outside the gates with nothing but a suitcase. And Sophia refuses to let betrayal destroy her. Instead of seeking revenge, immediately she makes a life-changing promise to rebuild her future from scratch. She vows that one day she will return stronger, wealthier, and more powerful than anyone who betrayed her ever imagined. Her incredible journey from rejection to success is only beginning. The day my father died, my stepmother smiled as she took everything he owned. She left me with just one suitcase and $10,000, then threw me out of the only home I'd ever known 5 years later. She walked into a bank, begging for a $50 million loan, never realizing the woman sitting in the CEO's office was the same girl she had destroyed. What happened next changed her life forever. The first few months after leaving the mansion were the hardest days of my life. $10,000 sounded like a lot of money until I started paying rent, buying groceries, and searching for work. Within 6 months, almost every dollar was gone. I rented a tiny studio apartment above an old grocery store. The ceiling leaked whenever it rained, and the heater barely worked during Chicago winters. During the day, I worked as a bank teller. At night, I studied investment banking, finance, and business strategy. While other people slept, I read books about leadership, economics, and successful entrepreneurs. Every rejection became another reason to work harder. 3 years later, an opportunity changed my life. The chairman of a growing private investment bank noticed one of my financial reports. He offered me a position as a junior financial analyst. I accepted immediately. For the first time, people judged me by my work instead of my last name. I worked longer hours than anyone else. I solved problems others avoided. Within 2 years, I became the youngest investment director in the company's history. My ideas helped the bank avoid risky investments and earn billions of dollars in new business. When the elderly chairman decided to retire, he surprised everyone. Instead of selling the bank to a large corporation, he offered me the chance to buy a controlling share through a partnership with several investors who believed in me. It was the opportunity I had dreamed about. By the age of 28, I became the CEO of Summit National Bank. Ironically, I now controlled more financial power than Bennett Developments had ever possessed. Meanwhile, the empire Victoria had fought so hard to steal was collapsing. She had no experience running a real estate company. Her son Ethan made reckless investments. They borrowed enormous amounts of money for luxury projects that never generated profits. Within 5 years, Bennett Developments was drowning in debt. News channels that once praised the company now reported bankruptcy rumors almost every week. Then, one rainy Tuesday morning, my assistant entered my office. "Miss Bennett," she said quietly, "there's a woman here requesting an emergency meeting." "Who is she?" She hesitated. "Victoria Bennett." For a moment, the room felt completely silent. The woman who had thrown me out with nothing was sitting in my reception area. I calmly replied, "Please show her in." A few seconds later, the office door opened. Victoria walked inside. She looked older. The confidence she once carried had disappeared. She didn't recognize me immediately. She simply placed a thick folder on my desk. "Our company needs a $50 million emergency loan," she said nervously. "We're running out of time." I slowly opened the file. Every page told the same story. Massive debt, failed projects, overdue payments. Finally, she looked up. Our eyes met. The color drained from her face. "Sophia?" I smiled politely. "Good morning." "Victoria." She stood frozen. I didn't know. No." I replied calmly. "You never expected the girl you threw away to be sitting in this office." Tears filled her eyes. "We made mistakes." "We?" I asked. "You told me I was never part of your family." She lowered her head. "I was wrong. For years, I continued. I dreamed about this moment. I imagined getting revenge. She remained silent. But life taught me something more valuable than revenge. I closed the loan application. Your company doesn't qualify for financing. Her shoulders collapsed. She quietly whispered, please, without this loan, thousands of employees will lose their jobs. I looked out the window for several seconds. Those employees had done nothing wrong. They didn't deserve to suffer because of poor leadership. So I made a decision. I won't save your ownership. She looked at me with confusion. But I will save the employees. A week later, Summit National Bank financed the acquisition of Bennett Developments. Through a court-approved restructuring process, Victoria and Ethan lost control of the company. The employees kept their jobs. The suppliers were paid. The business survived. And for the first time in years, it was being led honestly. Several days later, Victoria requested one final meeting. She quietly handed me an old family photograph. It showed my mother, my father, and me smiling together. I should have never tried to erase you from this family, she whispered. I accepted the photograph. I forgive you, I said softly. But forgiveness doesn't erase the choices we make. She nodded with tears in her eyes and walked away as I stood by my office window overlooking the Chicago skyline. I realized something my father had never understood. Real success isn't measured by how much you own. It's measured by the lives you choose to protect. The woman who once left me with nothing had unknowingly given me the greatest gift of all, the courage to build a life no one could ever take away. The end.